All right, where are all my friends? We're back at it with what I have deemed as the Streaming Council. We had a very popular episode a couple months ago where we tried something a little bit differently, and we talked just about basically digital streaming with Ben Farber and Josh Epple, both of which handle streaming at two different record labels. Ben is at Warner and Josh is at Hopeless. And y'all's perspective was so fun, so cool. So many people hit us up of just like, instead of so much telling a story, we were talking about a specific topic or trying to talk about like how to do something. And it was really, really fun. So I wanted to do that, but go even further into it and try to do a super short episode, 20, 30 minutes, and talk about one topic and one topic only. Y'all down?
Let's do it.
Down.
All right, let's do this. So the topic that I want to get into is singles versus albums and when you should be releasing which one or when you should be releasing them and the benefits of them. So to me, I'm going to come in hot with my opinion and then I'm going to ask y'all because I think that you're better qualified to answer, but I think it'll be a fun way to start the discussion. Also, sidebar, if you're listening and not watching, you need to switch to watching on YouTube because Josh is glowing right now. I don't know what your window view is or what your setup is, but it is angelic.
It's putting us both to shame right now.
It's messed up. It's not fair. My opinion, though, is I feel like right now, consistency and just like the frequency of content is so important that if artists were to put out at least one single a month with some kind of like music video, something visual, you would be absolutely ripping and it would be a very good strategy to grow. However, I also understand that an album is like an entire conceptual piece of art. So I'm really curious to get y'all's take on that and hear what you view as like the benefits of both. So the floor is yours. What do you think?
Josh, where should we start?
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, this question is asked a ton, and it's probably one of the biggest marketing things that you can kind of control, especially right now during a pandemic. Releasing music is kind of one of the only ways to keep people engaged while there's not touring and stuff. There is obvious benefits to both. Should we talk about releasing singles first? You want to start there, Ben?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do that.
Cool. So singles are really the way things are going. And, you know, with DSPs and everywhere, and if you're thinking about marketing, each single is its own little chance to pitch and to market and to have an event around yourself and what you're doing. It also gives you more chances to explore. It doesn't always have to be the same sound, where I feel like when people release albums, you get kind of pigeonholed. And if you deviate very far away from your original sound, you kind of get some guff for it. Whereas singles, you have a little bit more wiggle room. Ben, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, exactly that. Like, we now live in a world where content is more important than ever on a consistent basis. And these streaming services are similar to social media. You know, it's important for you on your Instagram and your Twitter to keep engaging with your fans, showing them what you're doing, what you're working on, what things are going on. It's a very similar strategy in the streaming space in order to continue to build engagement on these platforms. That's the ultimate goal for these platforms themselves, is to keep you engaged on it. So as an artist, we do kind of live now in a very singles-esque world where it is important to stay consistent with releasing music. Now, it's interesting because it's not necessarily, songs are not tweets and IG photos. So let's be clear there. You need time to give them to breathe and to, find their way through the ecosystem. Like these services are all about algorithmic playlisting and radio that need time for songs to grow in the service. So, we work with artists all the time that over a year basis, we put out a song every 4 to 6 weeks. And that strategy is been very effective, of organic, consistent growth. So, putting out singles on a consistent basis when you don't have a project ahead of you is important. And the other thing too that I want to mention is it doesn't have to be new music every single 4 to 6 weeks. Remixes, alternate versions, live versions that you put up on YouTube that sit there for a year, that is easily translatable to the streaming services. That in itself can be levers that you can pull, like Josh said. These are moments that you can kind of capitalize around when you're putting out consistent singles.
Totally. And I think, the benefits are especially good for singles early on in your career when you're kind of establishing yourself. Like, you need things to talk about when you don't have all these big things going on that other artists do. So if you're releasing music consistently and each time is an opportunity to gain fans and to gain momentum, that's so huge for you. And I think even past that, like into artists who are like in the middle part of their career are really big, like long gone are the days of like releasing a record and waiting 2 years to release something new. That just can't happen anymore. And I feel like that was the model for a really long time, but people forget about you. Like, if you don't have something every 3 months, you're kind of done. There's very few artists that could survive that. Like, I mean, Adele could do that because she's Adele, but like not many people can do that. So releasing singles is super beneficial.
Yeah. And a lot of art. Oh, go ahead, Josh. Finish your point.
I was going to say, like, there's almost now, maybe we should talk about this when we get closer to the album stuff, but like, there's now kind of a crossbreed between the two, Before, when you used to release records, you release 1 or 2 singles and then you would release the record. And now we're releasing half or over half of the record before as singles and then releasing a record. So kind of merging the two ideas where you could have a 10-month long campaign that's for a record, but you release 6 months of singles and then you release a record towards the end of it as this big capstone.
Question.
Yeah.
And I literally just thought of this off the top as you were explaining that, because I've seen that a little bit. And in your experience, as you've done those rollouts like that, where you're doing more and more singles, have you done any type of like audibles? Like, if you're trying to drop like just an absolute smash hit of an album and like in the single rollout plan, one of them doesn't respond well. Now that there's more time and you're rolling out more singles, have you adapted and taken things off of an album if you see a single not work?
Ooh, I don't think we've taken anything off of the album, but we have audible to like, oh, we should focus a little bit more on this side of the album. Like, if there's different sounds on the album, like there's softer stuff or heavier stuff or faster stuff or, whatever, we have pivoted in that way.
Crazy.
And we have released singles, and this happens to everybody, but like singles that we thought were going to be big that just didn't pop off. So we'll pivot and be like, oh, the next single is the focus track. And we're going hard on this one.
Yeah.
It's always important for us as a label to be strategic with that, because for us, we could have a Sweetie song like Tap In that's totally having a moment right now where we had a plan to release a remix, the album's coming, we have a whole plan, but now Tap In is in the top 50 on the US Spotify chart. We have to shift our entire plan to figure out how are we going to continue to drive that song up the chart? Because you release a remix that probably would have some pretty big features on it, for say, that could jeopardize that track. So, it goes both ways.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. One other question with that is, again, like that you make such a good point, is another advantage that you have with singles is you can kind of in real time analyze what's responding and what isn't. And when you get traction, you can double down on that. And another question that I've gotten asked a couple times just from like listeners or people that have wanted advice on music is, when you are like rolling out any type of campaign, I guess singles or album, timing your music video with it. And I was curious because on one side, if you waited to see which one hit and then did a music video afterwards, knowing it was a hit, that's awesome. And you're putting resource in the right spot. However, if you do it ahead of time, is there an advantage? Like, have you seen when you're pitching songs to playlisting, things like that, is there an advantage to saying, hey, the music video is going to come out on the same day that the album comes out? Is that smart to do?
I think it depends on what type of artist you are and where you are at in your career. Like, I think what Ben was saying is absolutely true. Like, you have to be very malleable. And when something starts taking off, and if you're doing a singles model and you've done 6 singles and, 3 singles ago starts popping off, you should focus all of your attention on that. And if there wasn't a video for it, because the tools there for both labels and for independent artists is so much better than it ever has been. You can literally see your song growing in real time. So if you put something out 3 months ago and it starts climbing, just go back and focus on it. Like, you want to focus on the things that are growing because it's already showing some success. So you might want to go back and make a music video, or like Ben was saying, do remixes or other versions of the song. I mean, there's songs that came out in like 2017 or 2018 that are now hitting the top 50 on Spotify because of TikTok and things like that.
That happened with that Lizzo song, right?
Yeah, she was like 2 years old. Same with the Louis Capaldi, Someone Like You. I was like 8 years old.
Wow,
That's what's really exciting about the streaming space. I mean, and in the singles world, a lot of artists will say, well, I don't want to be putting out consistent music because we're not going to be able to focus on those songs because we're going to be moving forward, which is true. Like, as our jobs are, we do have to kind of look forward. But what's amazing, and I tell every artist this, is when you put out a song on Spotify, that song lives on that platform for the rest of time, for the rest of that platform's time. It's not going anywhere. I have a friend who has a song that he put out 10 years ago on Spotify. It still gets like 10 streams a day. It's still finding a place in the platform. And, so you just you never know what could happen. And it's not necessarily like, I always say, when we're moving on to the next song, that's a good thing, because that next song is going to drive people into your Spotify profile, which then has a slew of other songs that fans can dive into. It's an advantage. So, it's a different way of thinking when, artists feel like you're, just putting out music. It's not the best way of looking at it, in my opinion.
Totally. And to your question about whether you should release a music video when you launch a song or afterwards, I think it depends on where you're at. There's kind of two different schools of thought. Like, if you release it when this song is also released, you're trying to make this big moment, this big splash where everybody is driving to, and that might be better when you are talking about like announcing a record or releasing a record, because the music video almost works as a commercial for your product or your release. So that might be a good moment to release it all together to make this big moment. If you're a developing artist, it might be better to space it out, because you're kind of looking to extend your marketing when you don't traditionally have all these press people and all these other radio, all these other things happening. So you could release a song and then 2 weeks later release a music video, and then 2 or 3 weeks later release an acoustic version. All of a sudden you just filled, 4 to 6 weeks with a marketing campaign for this one song as an independent artist. And hopefully each time you do something every 2 weeks, you're seeing it climb up. And if it's still climbing, you should still focus on it.
Dude, that's cool. That's such like a simple way to look at it. Like, instead of just saying, well, this is the right way you should do it, it's just like, well, you have all these tools to look at this data. You have all of these resources. So, understand, as you're a bigger artist, you can kind of use the commercial. But if you're working on a budget and you're just making everything work, like, you can be malleable and you can just do it when it makes sense.
I mean, dude, it's the most exciting thing about our business right now is there really is no right way. There isn't, you should be doing it this way. I mean, it's all about consumers' behaviors right now. And that's shifting with TikTok and all these other digital services that are popping up that like we don't even understand anymore. There's no real playbook to it. For me, it's just about consistency and staying consistent on each platform.
Yeah.
It is very cool. I do feel like we've moved into a space. I mean, I'm telling all my artists, like, no rules. You got ideas, bring them to the table. Like, nobody knows the right way to do anything right now. The only right thing to do is to engage with people and get attention. You know what I mean? So let's just try things.
Yeah, it's like stripping it back. It's like with 2020 and everything changing so fast all at once, and already digital, everything going faster. Now it brings it to this like very common sense level of like the playing field is even, or it's like leveled, and it's just what makes sense, what feels right. How well are you understanding your audience? How well are you just adapting and going with it?
Totally.
Which it's like, instead of just having like one set plan, the more open-minded you are and the more caring and just like down you are to look at these little avenues, there's always something that you can do.
Yeah. I mean, like 5 years ago, the worst thing in the world to happen during a campaign was for a song to leak. But now, like, artists are purposefully leaking songs on TikTok and everywhere else just so it blows up beforehand. And because fans are more engaged because they feel like it's part of this culty thing. There's an artist, Mafika, if you haven't check her out. And she did that exact same thing. And the song blew up. And before it, she had, almost no monthly listeners. And now she's in all the viral charts and everything else.
It's interesting that you say that, Epple, because it's so funny. Like, I was talking about this with a friend of mine who's running our one of our really major artist campaigns right now, where fans are, they'll literally go into the coding of a website to figure out information. And what's funny is before, like 10 years ago, kids would do anything they could to find it, to leak the information. And it's kind of flipped on its head where, he's built such a relationship with the fans that when they find something that's going to be leaked, they want to be the first to alert him about it, get taken down. Like, it's like it's almost flipped in a way, which is interesting.
It is.
That's cool. Okay, so we've talked now about singles and how flexible you can be, and you honestly have me extra excited because I had this hot take of just like consistency. Like, just if you were to not think about it, if you were to not read the room and listen to your audience and just say blindly, I'm dropping 12 tracks, one a month with some kind of visual, I still think that would be successful. But explaining why and explaining like that flexibility that you have has me extra excited about that. But the other side that I do think is worth talking about is these like people releasing music, like these artists, like it is art, and there can be like a vision or a whole entire conceptual piece of art. And at some point, I do think you should respect the artistic integrity and put something out that is meaningful if that's how an artist feels. So let's talk about the benefits of albums and when it's time to put out albums.
Yeah, I don't think anything can replace a very good album, especially a very good debut album. That just sticks in people's minds forever as something that like really affects them and something they gravitate towards, especially young people. Yeah. I mean, and young artists have proved it very, like Juice WRLD's debut, Good Riddance, Billie Eilish, When We All Fall Asleep. I feel like the album is what establishes you past just like bringing in income via singles. That's when you're going to start bringing people to shows. And that's when you're going to have almost like a cult or a fandom that are going to gravitate towards everything that you do. When you release a piece of art that brings it, you almost transcend past music. You become part of the culture of this community. And that's why I think the album is still really, really important. I think it's important to know when to release it, but you need to release it when it's time.
Fuck.
I mean, Josh nailed it. I'm not gonna lie. I really don't have much more to add. I mean,
how do we follow that?
Are really important, in this day. Like as Josh said, they could be cultural moments, even for a developing artist that has a small cult fan base. Like those are moments that you can really establish and bring yourself to the next level as a more established artist in itself. Just to echo Josh, but the timing of that is very important. You want to do it at the right time, and know as well, like what to expect after, because, for albums, I don't know, Josh, if you agree with me, but, the old day in the past, when you put out an album, then your marketing campaign begins. Your marketing campaign now is before the album. When the album comes out, then I don't want to say it's done, but it's a lot harder in the streaming space to like now market the hell out of it unless, you get a song that's popping and, so
totally.
Yeah, there are different ways of looking at it, but yeah.
Dude, that like you really, really blew my mind there because that's such a good point. And I guess the one argument to a bunch of singles is then you run the risk of being kind of that one-hit wonder. Like, again, we don't really know when touring comes back, but how often do we see that an artist will have a song that pops off, a song that'll go so far? It could be TikTok, it could be radio, it could be streaming. Everyone knows the name, everyone knows the song. That artist goes on tour and like 200 people show up and you're like, wait, what? And I do, like, it makes me think like, damn, when you put out that piece of culture, when you put out something that like means something more, like art, that maybe is that moment where it's like people will show up at your shows and it's like changing lives or it's like becoming part of their life.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's just knowing when to release that. And I think that that's when the singles come into play. Like if you release 10 singles and 2 of them pop off and you have some fans who are willing to get out there with a megaphone when you're about to release your album, that's the time to probably do it. But if you're going to release your album when no one is there to help you spread the word about it, it might be a very big missed opportunity, especially if it's a great album.
Yeah. How often does that happen? Like there's so many great albums. It's like, it's so easy to be like, oh, that's such an underrated album, whatever. And it's a bummer. It's an honest bummer. Cause like there's so many artists have put out incredible songs that have fallen under the radar.
Absolutely.
So then I think I guess, I don't want to say the conclusion, but like a big piece of this is like the singles is your promotional tool. The singles lets you read your market, understand your fan base, grow as an artist, find what you like, find your branding, find everything, play with how you're going to market it, experiment with what works, and really find it. It's that promotional tool. And then when you've really dialed it and when you really have something tangible, the fan base and the vision, that's when you start thinking about your album.
Yeah. And also what's crazy, again, this is just throwing the playbook out the window. There are also EPs. We have an artist right now that we're putting out a couple singles, getting him warmed up. Then we're going to drop his first EP with a couple tracks. And then the plan is that we're going to put out a second EP at the top of 2021. And then in a couple months, we'll combine them into an album if it makes sense. And now you got an album project. And then you spend the rest of the year marketing both of those EPs. So now we've created multiple hits putting together an album. Now, it's a very unconventional way, in my opinion, but we're trying it, and it seems to be reacting pretty well,
Dude,
and we're even
I love
the creative of
throwing
it,
out the playbook.
Yeah, the creative of it is like the EP 1 is the album title part 1, EP 2 is album title part 2, and then we'll combine it and slap on 3 new songs.
That's awesome.
So the album, you can kind of vary it in different ways as well, which is great.
Yeah. Ooh, this makes me think of another great question in this. Did you, I want to say like digitally packaging an EP or an album, right? And something that like with singles, I wonder, and you guys could probably tell me this, like we talk about like waterfalling, right? So like you release one single and then you like add it to the next single that comes out. So it's almost like a little mini EP. I guess this is specifically talking for Spotify, but how much is too much waterfalling? Like what's like, as far as like, as you're figuring out these singles and putting it like, cool, you're down to release singles. What's the best way to just make that look good on a Spotify account? Or like, what's any advice there?
I got some.
Let's go.
The strategy of the waterfall is to help increase your streams on your single. If you have a single, that's the focus. You put that out, and then you put out a second, maybe fan track leading into the album. But we are working the first song at radio, and there's a video. It makes sense strategically to do the waterfall. We have kind of gotten into a new realm where we think we should waterfall everything. And there are some times where we waterfall 4 songs. And it kind of takes away from the allure of that particular song and that particular product, especially if it's like different artwork, if it's packaged differently. Yeah. As a fan, I don't know what a waterfall is. I can go and look at that and be like, oh, here's a small little EP.
Right, exactly.
Like now the messaging is a little mixed where it's like you drop this little EP that a fan thinks, and then a couple weeks later there's a new album. It's, well, wait, what's, it feels disconnected. So even visually too, I just think like when you put out a new song, it should look fresh. It should just be by itself. Cover art, like, that's what Ariana Grande does. Like all the major, it's the song. Like this is it. So, the strategy of a waterfall should be approached very carefully and specifically focused just on a single.
Okay.
Not just because you have 5 songs that you put out before it and let's put them on. Like, see the same reaction, but I just don't think it's the right strategy.
Totally. The optimization part of it is great in the sense that you're collecting more streams. It does look very ugly. One way we get around that is when the album drops, we take all those down. So it's not like clogging up all of the other space.
Yeah. That is the beauty of streaming, is you can take those products down, which is important to do, no doubt.
Totally.
Right. Because as long as you're keeping the same ISRC code, it's still keeping the streams and keeping the data, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the other issue that I always say, what I argue the creative process of that, if you have different artwork that is the waterfall compared to your album, that artwork is part of the artist's creative story. I argue that you shouldn't take that down. That's part of their whole look, their feel.
Right.
So you got to think about those things as well. So I am always like, if we're going to take down a waterfall, it's because it's the album art and songs that are on the album that should come down. And we try to bring that up ahead of time to make sure that, because if you do release the waterfall with the original artwork, then I would argue just leave it.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And largely that should be up to the artist. You know what I mean? Like if they feel that that's part of their story and part of their art and the project, it should stay up, or it should come down if they feel like it should. We always present it to artists like, hey, here's the benefit of a waterfall. We'll get these extra streams, but if it is going to ruin the art of it all, we don't have to do it.
That's cool. Yeah. That's really cool. I love to hear that, because I was kind of thought of that. Like, it seems like the thing to talk about for a second. And then it also kind of felt like it's been like abused or like done a little bit wrong. And I'm like, my goodness, this is going crazy. So I really like your perspective there. We're getting close to our 30 minutes and I love this. I feel like we did such a good job getting right into that. My last question is, Ben, in the very beginning, you were saying releasing singles like 4 to 6 weeks. What is that sweet spot if you are going down the single route? What, in your experience, like what's a good window to think with?
To me, it is 4 to 6 weeks. And I say 4 to 6 weeks because I'm speaking on Release Radar. Radar being the most powerful playlist on the platform for everyone is about 4 to 6 weeks. It's hard to exactly say that it is 4 to 6 weeks because I have this conversation a lot. It depends on, if a user is dormant and you put out a song that week and they don't open Spotify for another week, say, their 4 to 6 weeks essentially starts, right? Like it refreshes, and so it could stay in longer. So we guesstimate about 4 to 6 weeks is a good gap to give your song enough breathing room to stay in Release Radar and find that traction. Because if you put a song out kind of any time earlier than that, both songs will stay in Release Radar, but the new one will take priority and you won't see both on both playlisting, and it'll kind of just affect it. So I always I don't know about you, Josh, but I always say 4 to 6 weeks is the minimum of what you should give yourself some space.
Totally. And 4 to 6 weeks gives you enough time to figure out if you need to pour more fuel on the fire. You know what I mean? I think in that amount of time, you'll know if you need to put out another single or go hard on another single.
Yeah, wow. That is a really nice window to see, like, if it's catching, if it gets picked up on TikTok or something like that, or if it's starting to get attention.
At Pandora, and we say to every artist, we can't give you a real read on your song at all until we have 4 weeks of data. Like, we need the song to breathe in order to really read if this is reactionary or not. So, it's kind of just, the algorithm needs time.
Yeah.
Dang. Guys, we did it. This was everything I wanted. I wanted to talk about one specific subject. You dropped so much knowledge. I'm not even an artist and I'm excited. I'm like, oh my God, this is such a good idea. I need to be releasing more singles. Wait, I don't have an artist project. Shit. So I really hope.
Get in the studio, Graham.
What's that?
Let's get in the fucking studio.
Let's go. Let's go. I really hope that this helps some artists or anybody listening to this that's been thinking about this. I think that it's something that we all talk about working in music so much. So I just wanted to try to put some kind of conversation out there that could forward this discussion or add information. If anybody listened to this, I know you guys have other episodes. Go back and listen to that one if you haven't. Anybody listening to this that are like, dang, these are the smartest people I ever did hear, and they want to send you a DM to be like, hey, you're the smartest person I ever did hear, where can people find you?
Go ahead,
Instagram. BL Farber on Instagram. It's my main platform of communication.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram as well. Epilogue, EPPELOGUE. And I want to say last time we did this, a ton of people reached out and had questions and just said thank you. And it was really cool talking to a bunch of artists. And it was awesome. It was really, really inspirational to hear people's stuff.
Yeah, honestly, like on that note, like putting out a podcast and doing this, like this is just like we have these conversations anyway. Like we're always just talking about these things. We're passionate about it. But there is this incredible feeling of like, oh, whoa, like people care. Like you almost don't know if you're going to put something out and people are going to care. So if you are listening to this, like it really does make our day to hear from you. So really, like send them a DM if you liked this. Ask them questions. They're the two smartest people I know, and they happen to be chill enough to be willing to help people and have these conversations. And I think that's amazing. So please, if you like this, if you're enjoying it, anything, let them know, because it makes us really happy to hear that.
I think I should start dropping my Venmo.
You're a savage.
You can reach me on Venmo.
That's fucking crazy. I love it. I love it. All right, tight. I'm ending it. We did the damn thing.
Thanks for having us, Graham.
Dude, thank you guys so much. I have a really, also, I guess, in that same note of giving us feedback, Josh and Ben are just the homies. Like, we love these conversations. So, and I love doing these little tiny subjects. So if there are more questions, if you guys keep liking this format, we shall assemble the streaming council when we need to, and we shall address the subjects that need to be addressed. So let us know.
I like that. The streaming council.
That's what I've got so far. All right, dope. I'm ending this. Yeah.